Okay, so today we're going to talk about how we write about science. So in the last lab, we were talking about scientific writing with popular press articles and big scientific studies. And today we're going to talk about different types of studies that we can do. And those include correlational, causal, mechanistic, technical, and anecdotal studies. So why do we write scientifically and why do we write in different ways? Well, we do experiments which can lead to different scientific evidence, and doing different types of studies can lead to evidence in different ways. These studies also build upon each other. We find out that there's a relationship, we figure out which variable causes which variable, and then we figure out why, and then we do how. So it builds on each other, and they help us identify if a study is good or not. If they're building upon each other and there's lots of research on one topic, then you can tell that they've put a lot of time in and that the study is good versus bad, right? We talked about that scientist who wasn't even an expert in the field, and he wrote tons and tons of papers about different things that he wasn't an expert on. These studies are written by experts, and they build upon each other by experts, so we can see that the research is good and that the data is good. So the types we'll be going over are correlation, causal, mechanistic, technical, and anecdotal. We'll be doing an example of one together, and then you will have two to do on your own and be prepared to discuss in class. They're color-coded for you. This is on page 12, 13, and 14 in your lab manual, and I would recommend you color-code this or you highlight different things as we go on. So first we'll talk about correlation study. So correlation means relationship. And the idea is that there's a relationship between a few variables, usually two, but between a couple. And with a correlation study, there are a few outcomes. You can have no correlation, or you can have a positive or a negative correlation. So looking at the example on page 12 in your lab manual, they are talking about smoking. Now, this is not talking about cause. We'll get into that with a causal relationship, but this is showing that there is a positive correlation between smoking and lung cancer, in that people who smoke have a much higher rate of lung cancer compared to those who do smoke. We're not saying smoking causes lung cancer, but we're saying, there is a relationship there. More people who smoke tend to have lung cancer than people who don't smoke. So the question we're looking for is why? Why do more people who smoke have lung cancer more often? That leads us to a causal study. So a causal study shows that there is a relationship between two variables, but that one variable causes, it's in the name, the other variable to occur, causes a change. So going back to page 12, an example in your lab manual, this is 12 and 13. Let's say you did a study. Now, these causal experiments are very difficult to do because with humans especially, because you need to do them over time. So in the example in your lab manual, you had 1,000 people, you divided them into two groups of 500, and you asked the first group to not smoke for 20 years, and you asked the second group to smoke a pack a day for 20 years, which would be difficult, right, to make people do that per se, and only smoke one pack or not smoke at all. And then you have to make sure they live the same lifestyle so that you can only have smoking as a variable, which again, very difficult to do in humans. It's much easier to do in other organisms or in other studies. The example continues, and what you do is at the end of the 20 years, you're comparing the rate of lung cancer. And let's say, for example, you find that the experimental group, so the ones that were smoking, had a 50% rate of lung cancer, but in the group that didn't smoke, no one got lung cancer. So you could say that smoking causes lung cancer in people who smoke cigarettes for a long time. And that is to note, it's over a long time. It's not instantly, it's over 20 years. So then we need to ask, how? So we know that smoking causes lung cancer, but how does it cause lung cancer? That moves us into the mechanistic study. A mechanistic study is a type of causal study, but it's showing us how it works, how it causes that change in another variable, the mechanism, you could say. So this is on page 13, and what it's saying is that, you're a biochemist, you're a physiological and biochemist, and you are looking at the molecular data. You find that people who develop lung cancer have this molecule, we'll call it molecule X, and over time it gets less and less and less. Molecule X inhibits cell division. cancer is caused by cells dividing uncontrollably. So this molecule kind of keeps that under control. Now, in our study, it shows that people who continued to smoke had less and less of molecule X, so cell division increased and increased. So the mechanism is that the cells lost their ability to control cell division because molecule X was reduced. So that is how more people who smoked had lung cancer. You smoke, you lost molecule X, your cells divided, you got cancer. That's the mechanism. These studies are all part of the scientific process, the scientific method. Usually we start with correlation studies and move on to causal and mechanistic, even though causal studies are really hard to do in humans. A lot of times people will skip straight to mechanistic because it is a type of causal study, but in general it is good to go causal mechanistic, or correlational causal mechanistic. Now, let's say you're another scientist reading this paper. You're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, but I want to make sure that they're doing it correctly and I want to replicate their results. How can I do this study? This would be a technical paper. It's basically methodical. It's purely methods. When I was doing my research in grad school, there were a lot of papers on how to do my specific research, different parts of it. A lot of times these papers are published to help people replicate the study and back up the results. People do the research over and over again. This is part of the scientific method to show, hey, we're all on the same page. This isn't purely chance. We're all doing great and this looks good. So yes, their results are good. We can move forward with the scientific method. Sometimes people get flukes, people replicate it and they're like, oh no, that's really bad science. They did something wrong. So having a technical paper really helps people to back up and show that's good science. Another type of study is an anecdotal study. An anecdote is just a personal story or a personal experience. And these types of studies really don't have any ground or any oomph to them because, again, just a personal experience, no real data to back it up. There's an example in your lab manual on page 13. A person ate fish and yogurt at the same time, which sounds disgusting, and got sick. And so they believe that eating fish and yogurt at the same time will make you sick. I have a similar story. I drank a drinkable yogurt in middle school, and I got very sick and threw up, so I will not drink drinkable yogurt. And even yogurt can put me off a little bit. I just think that it's going to make me sick. And again, that's a personal experience, and it only happened to me once. I've eaten yogurt in the since then, and I haven't had a problem. Not drinkable yogurt, though. I will not drink drinkable yogurt. Again, this is just showing that there may be another factor. We don't actually know. Yes, you ate fish and yogurt on the same day and you got sick, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the fish and the yogurt maybe got you sick. Maybe you had the flu temporarily and it just didn't show symptoms until after you had eaten, things like that. It's a personal observation, and you could use it as a starting point for a scientific paper. Oh, I noticed this. Now I want to see if there's a relationship between eating fish and yogurt. Does it make people sick? However, we need to be careful with these anecdotal studies because they often are the basis of our social and cultural beliefs and get passed on for generations and generations, and we can't stop it. Different beliefs that people have, different wives' tales, things like that. Oftentimes, they have these anecdotal studies have roots in our evolution. This is on page 14, by the way. Basically, an anecdote is an example of a false positive where you see a connection, which can usually does us any harm because we can like buy into the cure and it's really not going to hurt us. Oh, I'm not going to eat fish and yogurt together. It's not going to hurt us over the long time to not eat fish and yogurt together, and it can actually protect us evolutionarily, help us live longer and stay alive. A false positive does no harm, but a false negative is a connection between two things that are really there, but people don't see it. So this is on page 14. The idea is, okay, I don't believe grizzly bears are harmful, and then I was killed because I didn't see that there was a connection that they are bad, actually. So that is a false negative. There's no harm in believing false positives, but there is a lot of harm in not believing a false negative, which is a little confusing. Let's take a look at an example. This is in a PDF on Canvas. It's called Types of Studies. I want you to pause the video to read the study, and then we'll discuss the study. So we are going to read this one. Grapefruit and statins don't mix. So you may have heard this before. If you're taking certain drugs, you shouldn't eat grapefruit juice or citrus juice, especially grapefruits. So this study was done to show the relationship between grapefruit and statins. So they say taking certain cholesterol-lowering drugs at the same time as grapefruit juice can increase the risk of potentially life-threatening muscle toxicity. British regulators warned on Tuesday. So basically, they're saying taking cholesterol-lowering drugs at the same time as grapefruit juice can increase this problem, this muscle toxicity. So, and they're saying the problem occurs because grapefruit contains a chemical that inactivates a liver enzyme involved in drug metabolism, and as a result, drinking grapefruit juice can lead to excessively high levels of medicine in the blood. Basically, drinking grapefruit juice means you aren't breaking it down in your liver, and so it's just in your blood, which can lead to muscle toxicity. So they are showing that you take grapefruit juice and statins, there is a relationship between them. There's a cause. Drinking grapefruit juice causes muscle toxicity and they're showing why. So they're showing how, I'm sorry. So basically we have a mechanistic study here, right? So there's a relationship here between taking drugs and grapefruit juice causes muscle toxicity. And we want to know what the causal relationship is. One has an effect on the other. So the mechanism here is that it inactivates a liver enzyme involved in drug metabolism. So here you can see a perfect example of this causes this. Taking cholesterol drugs and grapefruit juice causes muscle toxicity, and we have the why. We have the mechanism behind it. This is a mechanistic study. So for class, next week I want you to read this one, the olive oil labels, and I want you to read this one. It goes all the way down to the bottom. I want you to read both of those. And determine which is which. Is it mechanistic? Is it causal? Is it correlational? Is it anecdotal or technical? And you'll need to come to class and be ready to discuss this with your group, and then as a class, this will be part of your participation grade for the semester. So make sure you read these and you come ready for that. If you have any questions, you can ask me. My office hours are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, or whenever you really want to come, we can make an appointment to make it work. All of this is on Canvas. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great rest of your day.